Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Final day down here at the family condo. Final day of vacation before we get back to our home studio. Regularly scheduled 2 episodes a day. But ESPN yesterday, Matt Miller, who covers the draft for ESPN, dropped a first-round mock draft for 2026. And seeing it as the dead period when it comes to NFL news, training camp not kicking off until later this month. Happy July, by the way. Also, go Magic. You can see the hat here. Happy to have Tyus Jones in Orlando. I figured first-round mock, but the Jaguars are not featured in that first-round mock draft, obviously because of the Travis Hunter trade-up from this past draft, a trade that was monumental at the time. Huge move for the Jaguars, acquiring, in my opinion, the most talented player in the draft of 2025, but it does leave them without a first-round pick for 2026. Now, I decided since there's no first-round pick for the Jags, we're going to do a day 2 of the draft, mock draft, which is rounds 2 and 3. The Jaguars still, despite that big trade-up for Travis Hunter, they do still have 4 picks in the first 2 days of the draft. First 3 rounds, the Jaguars have 4 picks. Right now, they have 41, 73, 93, and 100 based on the current odds projections for the season over at NFL Mock Draft Database, which I think is based off Super Bowl odds. Obviously, if the Jaguars are picking 41, that means they finished around with like the 9th worst record in the NFL, something like that. That would represent a disappointing season. This is not a franchise, a regime, a coaching staff, a group of players that is looking at themselves as a bottom 10 team in the NFL right now, even though you look around the internet, a lot of folks kind of seem to have the Jaguars there for various different reasons. Part of the reason just being the fact that it's been pretty easy to predict over the last 12, 13 years. I mean, it's not been a bad bet to put the Jaguars somewhere in the top 10, quite honestly, when it comes to the draft order. But that would be a disappointing finish, but that's what we've got right now to go off of. So the Jaguars have, again, 41, 73, 93, and 100. Obviously, some of these picks acquired in trades in the 2025 draft. So they're in a good spot still, even though they don't have a first-round pick. We know James Gladstone and company are unafraid to move up in the draft, to move down in the draft, to try to acquire talent where they see fit and be bold in doing so. And so 4 picks right now slated for the first 3 rounds. I would honestly be kind of surprised if they don't end up making some sort of moves here at one of these spots or multiple of these spots. But for right now, we're just going to kind of keep it status quo and talk about maybe some areas of the draft. Obviously, the 2025 college football season hasn't even happened yet. You got a lot of football ahead of us. So draft rankings right now are very preliminary. Things will change, certainly, but we're just going to have a little fun, right? It's a dead period. So let's talk some 2026 NFL draft. I love the draft. If you know anything about me, you know I cover the draft heavily, both for the Jaguars at Gen Jag, Duval Daily, and I also have Rogue Football where I cover the draft. We're going to dive into it, and this will partially be based off of the future needs of the team, potential future needs of the team, and then also just the talent as I see it right now. So at 41, I have the Jaguars looking at the trenches. I think that long-term, you could definitely look at the interior defensive line and say you have some needs there. Some might consider it a short-term need as well. I think when you look at the fact that Eric Armstead probably could still be on the roster, Devon Hamilton could still be on the roster, you have Mason Smith. It might not be a short-term need. It could be, though. You never know. But I think that addressing the trenches on the interior of the offensive and defensive line is something the Jaguars probably will need to do based on their current roster and their future needs in 2026. So I have them going Florida, defensive lineman. I'm projecting him as a defensive tackle for the Jaguars. Tyreek Sapp at 41 overall. Not doing this because I'm a Gator fan, but damn good football player. He has really good size, length. He plays in 275 range. I think he could put on some weight, but he played a lot of edge at Florida, defensive end, hand in the dirt, two hands in the dirt. But he kicked inside a good bit, and that's where I get really excited about his projection to the next level. You've seen James Gladstone and the Rams kind of take smaller interior defensive linemen and weaponize them. And I think the Jaguars can do that here in Jacksonville as well. And so I see Tyreek Sapp as a guy that could be similar to Kobe Turner. I think probably need to put on a little bit of weight to do that, but his length, quickness, explosiveness off the snap on the interior, it's just too much for guards and centers to handle. Bottom line, it's really something to see. He's got a bag of pass rush moves. He's got flexibility. He's got length that's difficult to deal with. And again, that athleticism on the interior is just, that's tough. And so I think that looking at him in this forward-thinking organization, you don't have to go get this traditional 320-pound defensive tackle, right? I think Tyreek Sapp could really work. And he can also be a move piece on the defensive front, right? Emmanuel Ogbah up there in age, Dewan Smoot up there in age, Dennis Gardeck probably won't be around beyond the 2025 season. So you look at these guys and you say, well, edge is a future need, backup edge behind Trayvon and Josh. Interior defensive line is a future need. Why don't you get somebody who can do both, right? And I think Tyreek Sapp can definitely do that for you. At 73, I have center Parker Brailsford. Possible he's not available, but I do think the Jaguars are going to need to do more for the future at center because I think Robert Hainsey, even though he has familiarity with Liam Cohen, has familiarity with the system, had a really good game in his only start last year against the Saints, I think he is a replacement level starter. He's on a 3-year deal, team out after 2 seasons, after the 2026 season. I think getting someone in here who can really elevate that center position in the near future would be big. And I think Parker Brailsford can do that out of Alabama. Needs to put on a little bit more weight, and I think he probably has done that this offseason. Haven't checked in on his workout status, but he had a really good year for Alabama last year at center. He's really athletic. He's really talented. I think he has good footwork and hand usage at the center position, and he's the type of guy that you can definitely win with on inside and outside zone concepts. He can pass protect at a high level. So I could see him coming in, and you might say, well, they drafted Jonah Monheim in the 7th round. Yes, they did. I don't think betting on a 7th rounder who has historically low arm length for the position, short arm length for the position, and really struggles with power at times. I don't think he's going to end up being a better center than Robert Hainsey, for one. And I don't think he really has that path to being a great player. I think he has a path to being a good role player, rotational player. Potentially, Jonah Monheim does. So you go interior offensive line at 73, interior defensive line at 41, and you've really kind of solidified the trenches. I think that pairing up Brailsford with McCary, with Cleveland / Milam is a good spot to be in there. At 93, we have not addressed what could potentially be the Jaguars' most glaring need following the 2025 season, depending on what happens with De'Ami Brown, and that's wide receiver. Obviously, you have wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, but you could really need a big-time wide receiver 3, depending on, do you keep De'Ami Brown? How well does he play? If he plays well, does he go sign somewhere else? How does it all play out? He's only on a 1-year deal, right? I think you would like to keep him in Jacksonville and not have this be an issue. And I think you have the flexibility to do that because you're not having to pay Brian Thomas Jr. or Travis Hunter big money for the next handful of years. So I could definitely see De'Ami sticking around. But if he doesn't, I think wide receiver could definitely be something to target on day 2 of the draft. And there's a lot of guys that could potentially be available here. Wide receiver is going to be deep again this year. I have Evan Stewart as somebody to watch here in this spot. I know that he came into college with unbelievable amounts of hype, and he started at Texas A&M, flashes there, transferred to Oregon this year, again, flashes more than consistency in terms of the production, but really explosive, really talented player who I think in the right system at the next level, in the right situation, could be a problem. And I think using him as a vertical threat and an underneath threat could potentially work for his skill set. He's really explosive. He's not the biggest guy, but he's not absolutely tiny, but he is a little on the smaller side. I think just a hair under 6 feet. Plays in the 180s, but his best plays are, I mean, as good as anyone in college football. It's about getting more consistent. It's about really, I think they need to utilize him more as well at Oregon this year. But I think Evan Stewart, if you could get somebody that talented in the third round as a potential wide receiver 3 for your team, if De'Ami Brown moves on, I think that could be a really good fit for the Jaguars. And he would continue to add that speed and that juice to the wide receiver room and to the skill position group as a whole. And then at 100, the final pick here of this mock draft, I have another defensive lineman. Again, I think edge beyond 2025 could be a big need. They could once again elect to fill that need via veteran free agents, right? But they could also say, we really want to fortify this group long term behind Josh Hines-Allen, behind Trayvon Walker, surrounding Mason Smith with good talent. And I have Trey Moore, the Texas edge, who started his career at UTSA. He is 6'1", 245, so a little bit of a squattier build, but plenty of strength on his frame and mass on his frame for a 6'1" guy. He can convert speed to power. He can threaten the outside arc. He's really good at crossing the face of tackles. And he plays with a big motor. I think he's a very fluid edge player. So I think he would be a complement to Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, who are both on the bigger side. Obviously, they've slimmed down a little bit, especially Josh Hines-Allen, but Josh Hines-Allen is still a big edge. I think getting in a guy like Trey Moore, who can be a change up a little bit, as they've talked about, and also someone who very productive, whether it was at UTSA or Texas last year. He knows how to create disruption in the backfield. You can move him around a little bit. He has played, right outside linebacker, so he also has that dropping ability if you need him to be able to perform in that capacity at all. So I think that he's a well-rounded guy who does provide a change-up to Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, and plays with a spark. So this would be, based on what information we have right now, I think this could be a really good start for the Jaguars in the 2026 NFL draft. And I think you look at some of these guys, they could contribute immediately in a Tyreek Sapp, a Parker Brailsford, Evan Stewart, and Trey Moore. I think they could all get out on the field. And, Evan Stewart needs to have a better year. I think for Evan Stewart to be a day 2 pick, he really needs to have the best season of his career. We'll see if he's able to do that. I'm excited to watch him this year, but there's a ton of wide receiver talent. I'm not going to lie. I love Eugene Wilson out of Florida as well, but I didn't want to drop 2 Gators on here for all the FSU fans out there. I did look at a couple FSU guys as well. Darrell Jackson, potentially interior defensive lineman, but I thought that Tyreek Sapp just has a little bit more pass rush juice and overall pass rush skill right now, and maybe more of a fit for what you've seen the Rams do on the interior of their defensive line compared to a big Darrell Jackson. But they should have experience, know a little bit about Darrell Jackson and the rest of that FSU defensive front. Just something to keep in mind. Had a little fun here with this 2026 Day 2 mock draft, 3-round mock draft, but obviously the Jaguars don't have a first-round pick right now. Would not be surprised if they sneak back up into that first round. They have the ammunition to do so if they want, but didn't do any trades here. So you had 41 defensive tackle Tyreek Sapp, 73 center Parker Brailsford, 93 wide receiver Evan Stewart, and at 100 edge Trey Moore out of Texas. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe, and y'all have a good one.